Welcome to the Tits Up podcast with Coley Arnold, the unapologetic space for women in the thick of it. You know, the messy middle where you're too far in to quit, but the finish line feels like a mirage. Where the pressure is high, the stakes are real, and every win feels hard-earned. This isn't a highlight reel. This is the unfiltered truth about building a business, holding your life together, and finding your fire when it would be easier to burn it all down. If you're tired of fake perfection and ready for the real, raw conversations that make you feel seen and lit up, then grab your coffee, your courage, and let's do this. Shoulders back, head high, tits up, girlfriend. Are you building a business that might look good on paper but still feels lonely, messy, or unclear behind the scenes? You don't have to figure it all out alone. The Foundress is a community for female founders who are ready to scale with clarity, connection, and purpose. Whether you're making your first 6 figures or scaling towards 7, we're the place where your ambition is seen, your ideas are sharpened, and your success is celebrated. Inside, you'll find strategy, deep support, and a powerful circle of women who get it. Because at Foundress, we don't just network, we grow together. If you're craving more than just another business group, if you're ready for mentorship, momentum, and women who speak your language, come join us. Your seat at the table is waiting. Head to foundress.co to learn more. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about permission. And this is one of my keywords for not only my business, but my life. And a lot of times we look outside for permission. We seek it from others. We look for it for validation. But really what I want to talk about is a permission that lives inside us. And how do we give ourselves permission to step out and be the business, the life, whatever it is that we want, but giving ourselves that permission to take that leap. About 8 years ago, when I was talking about starting Foundress, I often get a lot of requests to go to coffee or let someone pick my brain. And I often say no, not because I don't love the opportunity to sit and have a conversation with someone at all times, but honestly, because I was overwhelmed. At the time, I was building junk in the trunk. We had kind of talked about building this new brand of Foundress. And then I also have children. I have 4 boys and a husband, and my time is limited. And so I wish desperately that I could say yes to every coffee invite or to the reach out to connect. But on that week, when we had decided to launch Foundress, I decided to say yes. And I really did it out of curiosity to see, what are these women looking for? What do they feel like they need that I could provide them? And what's their big ask? And so I said yes to 3 different women. 2 of these women, they were friends of friends I had never met before. They had followed me on Instagram, had known Junk in the Trunk for years and followed me there. And then one was a friend, and I would say a acquaintance more. But I decided to say yes out of curiosity. And so I said yes to 3 dates for coffee. And what I realized was all 3 of them, of course, they lasted an hour and a half each to 2 hours, because that's how those things go. And I loved connecting with these women. But what I realized was I would listen, and I listened intently. And at the end, every single one of them were desperately asking for permission to do something different than what they were currently doing. Whether it was a big idea they had for a business, whether it was pivoting in their life, moving, all 3 of them had a completely different reason to reach out to me and ask for my advice. And what I told them at the end, after listening and being very quiet, was, I think you should do it. And just that little nudge gave each of them the power to make that decision in their life. I was giving them the permission, but they didn't really need it from me. They needed to hear that their idea was a good idea. They needed to be validated. And afterwards, they all 3 called me and said, thank you so much. You gave me such great advice. This was so amazing. I have the confidence to step out into that idea or do that next big thing. But the funny thing is, I really didn't give them much advice, except for telling them that I thought their idea was a great idea, and that giving them that next action step, going, just do it. Just do it. I felt like a Nike commercial, right? Just do it. But what they were desperately seeking was that permission. So today I want to talk about permission and why it is such one of the hardest things for females to kind of grant ourselves. In Founders, we talk a lot about permission, clarity, and community. And I believe so strongly that community is what gives us the permission and the clarity. When we surround ourselves with others who will lift us up, who will tell us the truth, who will encourage us to really take that next bold step in our life or our business, that is where the permission and the clarity comes from. So permission is often waiting for someone else's approval. But what I'd like to flip that on its head and really just invite you to take that permission for yourself. You already have the permission. What you're looking for is validation, and those two things are very different. So I would encourage you, if there's a big idea that you're toiling with, if there's a pivot in your life that you want to make, that give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. You can ask for advice on how to do those things. You can get validation on, is this a crazy idea or is this okay? Those aren't bad things. Leaning into that community and hearing other people's opinions are not bad things. But oftentimes what we're doing is we're asking someone else to give us our permission. If we stumble upon someone who thinks this is not a good idea, like, what does that mean for you? If you're looking for that outside resource to give you that permission and they might not give you the answer that you want, what does that mean for what you're thinking about doing or that big idea? And so seeking outside validation can often cause us to make a misstep or not really trust our intuition. So I would really encourage you that we're going to pull that permission from inside of us and not looking for validation. Common traps that we as women fall into are chasing the shoulds. What should we be doing? I know I've talked a lot about shoulds and what those things can turn into at a misalignment because we're chasing someone else's idea for our life or for our business. Believing that you need credentials, more experience, or validation before acting, that the permission inside you is actually all that you need to take that next step. Then we often feel that guilt that we're not supposed to feel like that. For me, more money means more impact, more freedom, and I can help so many more women. So I want to reframe that permission is the internal decision that unlocks the momentum. It is not outside validation. Those are two separate things. So the permission that we struggle to give ourselves is really to dream big. We often like to shrink. We dumb our ideas down because we don't want to feel stupid, or we don't want to be too much, or we don't want to feel like we're greedy. And so we dull ourselves and our passion and our light and our excitement for others around us so we don't make them uncomfortable. We often don't have the permission to fail and learn. We need to give ourselves permission to make a mistake. It's not the end of the world if something doesn't go wrong. It's data, and then you use that to make the next best move in your business or your life. Giving yourself permission to fail is so important while you're growing your business, especially in your life. I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, I just made a mistake. I'm really sorry. How are we going to move forward from that? But being afraid to fail is the number one block of success in anything that you do. Permission to say no. Permission to say no is so important. Setting boundaries around yourself, especially if you have big dreams and goals, you have to set boundaries. Every yes is a no to something else. So what are you saying yes to and what are you saying no to? And are those aligned with your big vision? What does your calendar look like? Does your calendar look like it's aligned with your big dreams and goals, or does it look like it's full of stuff that you said yes to that you probably shouldn't have? Permission to do it differently. Running your business your way, maybe not from your corporate background and culture, maybe not from what your mom and dad said you should do, maybe not how your best friend runs her business, but do it the way you want to do it. Last year, I spent about 12 to 13 months really playing and trying new things in my business. It looked chaotic from the outside, I'm sure, but I desperately needed that time for myself to try to see what lit my soul up, what worked for my customer, what made my community better. I had to try those things, and some of them failed miserably and some of them were huge successes, but I never would have known unless I tried. And so that with that permission to fail, I had that permission to fail because I wasn't afraid to fail. I knew that I'm going to try a bunch of stuff and more than half of these things won't work. And that's okay because I get to cross them off my list. But I got to give the permission to do it differently to myself. And through that, I found the perfect system for my own business, my community that worked best, that set up my women to thrive and give them the best resources for them to thrive and have a thriving business. But if I was not giving myself permission to do it differently than I had seen, or being afraid to fail, none of these would have happened. None of these would have come to fruition. And then this is a huge one: permission to be seen. If you are a woman who has been told that you're too much, that you're too loud, your ideas are too big, you might be a little crazy. I've all been there. But gosh, you have the permission to be seen. You deserve to be seen. Only you have your message. And other people might have a similar message, but it's not going to be delivered the way you have it. And if you are not seen, you cannot sell what you cannot see. So if people don't know what you do, people don't know what you sell, they can't buy it. They can't join you in that mission that you have to help others. And so you have to give yourself the permission to be seen, to show up boldly, to share your story, and to claim your space. And what an incredible legacy and leadership that you're going to show if you show others that they can be seen too, and that they deserve to be seen. Okay, I want to talk about the ripple effect of permission. When you claim permission, you model it for your team, for your family, and for your community. Without that model, if they don't see people doing it, they can't do it for themselves. Again, we can't do what we can't see. And so stepping out in faith, giving yourself that permission to be seen, to be bold, to claim your space, has a huge ripple effect, not only in your life, in your business, in your community, in your family. Every day I tell myself, like, the things I'm doing and making bold moves in my business is proving to my children that they could do and be whatever they want. It's proving that they don't have to ask for permission. They can give themselves permission, and they can do it how they want to do it. They can do it differently. Saying no to a misaligned client opens up space for your dream client. I say this over and over again, that you cannot bring in more unless you make space. You have to expand, and expanding means saying no, setting boundaries, doing things that they're going to look different maybe to the outside world, that only maybe make sense to you. You might get flack for it. I go to bed early. I do a lot of no's for late night events. I say no to a lot of things. Because I have big dreams and I have big goals, and that requires my energy, and that requires me to show up a certain way. And if I'm out late every night, or if I'm saying yes to every event I get asked to go to, then I'm not showing up for myself and for my business the way I need to for that expansion. And so if I'm saying yes to clients maybe that don't align, I'm not leaving space for the clients that would be my ideal client, my ideal perfect fit. So what are you saying yes to that maybe you should say no to? We talk about alignment a lot in here. You know, I'm doing a retreat with Coach Christy about alignment, and I think it's so vital in our business. But if we are not creating that space by saying no, then the things that are aligned for us don't come. We talked about this on our episode with Ebony, but she took a sabbatical, and I think sometimes there's a fear of walking away and giving ourselves permission to rest. We think that everything's going to crumble around us, that our team can't make it, that nothing's going to survive without us being right there and doing all the things. My husband calls that being control freak. But what does that look like if we give ourselves permission to rest? The ripple effect of that not only shows our team that, our family that, what does that do through your community when you show and lead that rest is important? Permission multiplies. When one woman claims it encourages other women to claim it as well. So what are you doing? What are you holding yourself back from that could really make a huge impact in this world? That ripple effect is important. I read Jen Gottlieb's book, Be Seen, and she talks about a lady named Brenda. And Brenda was on the brink of suicide. She was ready to take her own life. And she called the suicide hotline. And the suicide hotline gal told her 3 things. She said, take 1 pill instead of the whole bottle, go to sleep, and wake up the next morning and do something new, do something different. So she did. She listened, she went to sleep. She got up the next morning and she happened to run across one of Jen's online challenges. And it was like the challenge to be on TV, which Brenda had no interest in. But she joined because that was her thing to check off the list. She was going to do that one next thing. But what she found inside was the fact that she does have a story to tell. She does have a mission in life. And the fact that she did a live on Facebook, I believe, and was able to share her story. And someone called her the next day and said, "You changed my life. You saved my life. I heard your story and I realized I do have a message to share and it is important for me to be on this earth." And so the ripple effects are magnetic. You never know who you're affecting, but if you're not being seen, you can't affect anyone. Brenda ended up being a multi-six-figure business owner, and helping hundreds of other people that were feeling desperate and lonely, just like she was. And so your permission multiplies. If you give yourself permission to be seen, to show up, to be heard, that ripples. Okay, so how do we access that permission? We talked a little bit earlier about not reaching that outside validation for that permission. So how do we internally pull that permission out of us that I know is there? Awareness is the first piece of that, and it's huge. If we don't have awareness around who we are, what we do, what we believe, then there's no giving ourselves permission. I was afraid of feeling. I was grew up as oldest daughter, got shit done. I was able to, I'm a problem solver. I'm always constantly being able to like make shit like happen. And always very busy. I always had multiple things going on at the same time. And I never wanted to feel the feelings because I was afraid. In my head, I thought to feel my feelings meant I was like on the couch or in my bed crying all day long. And I was speaking to my therapist about this, and she said, "Do you know if a feeling only lasts 90 seconds? And I was like, what? I didn't know that. Because in my head, I had made this story up and thought that if you were an emotional person, you would just lay in bed and cried all day. And so I never knew that to feel a feeling actually only took 90 seconds. And once I started allowing myself to feel the feelings in the moment, taking 90 seconds and just pausing, whether it was anger or frustration or sadness or despair, whatever that emotion was, being able to feel it gave me so much awareness about what was going on in my life, who was surrounding me that maybe wasn't giving me the best energy, what situations I was in that maybe weren't aligned in my life. But without that awareness, without that feeling, I would never have gotten there. And I was constantly seeking other people's approval because I wasn't tuned into my own self to give myself permission and approval. Mantras, anchors, things that help you ground into who you are. I did a exercise with my coach the other day, and we talked about just giving a mantra of just grounding ourselves back into ourselves. She was saying that seven syllable mantras are actually, our brains are wired to memorize 7 syllables. And so creating a mantra for yourself that's 7 syllables, easy to remember, easy to say over and over again. And it was interesting while we did the exercise, it was kind of a meditation, and you leaned in and listened to kind of what was coming up. And the word peaceful kept coming up, which if you know me, I am a manifesting generator. I am a Enneagram 7. Peaceful is not what anyone would describe me as. But that word kept coming up, and I tried to change it. I tried to put it in different words, and nothing stuck. It wasn't giving me that feeling of groundedness. And so I kept it. And my mantra was I am secure and peaceful. I am secure and peaceful. And that I have been actually saying that to myself when I'm feeling anxious or I'm getting a little out of control with my emotions or feeling like I don't have control of a situation. And I've been using that mantra, that 7-syllable mantra, to ground myself. And I instantly feel this grounding just energy when I'm able to say that mantra. So giving that having that awareness and then having a mantra that brings me back to that awareness, where if I'm living in my energy up here, I'm constantly just worrying about everyone else. But if I can ground myself into my own feelings and into my own desires, then I can be aware of what permission I need to grant myself. I love this, micro permissions. Oftentimes, I think when we think about big ideas or pivoting our life or moving across the country, like these are big, big decisions that we feel like we need so much outside validation for. But oftentimes what we're actually seeking the outside validation for are the tiny little decisions that we make every day. But if you can practice those small yeses that align with you, once the bigger ones come, it'll be an easier, natural process. Okay, and then accountability through community. This is a huge one. You know how I feel about community. I'm obsessed with community. I'm in multiple communities. I own a community with the foundress, and I will not do anything without a group of people around me. I think it is so vital to just have that accountability, that other people normalizing things, saying like this. And I love communities where maybe I don't agree with everyone, or I'm not completely on the same path as everyone in that community, because it gives me different perspectives and I'm able to ground even deeper into what I believe and how I feel about certain aspects. It gives me that permission to be fully me and hear all sides, and being able to bounce those things off of my knowing and my grounding, that really just expands me. And I love it so much. I think it's so important. And then the last one would be journal prompts. So I am not a journaler. It's not something that I love to do. When I sit with a blank piece of paper, I'm like, I don't know what to write. I have so many things on my head, yet nothing's coming to my mind. And so having prompts, I actually love going to ChatGPT and just saying, here's, give me a couple of journal prompts for growth in my business or for professional development or whatever you're working on in that moment. And it gives you these amazing prompts to get outside of your head and start writing how you feel about things. So an example of one would be, if I gave myself full permission, what would I change right now? And it's those little questions that tweak everyday action that make the biggest impact in our life. What's bringing me joy right now today? And then how can I double down on that? And how can I delegate something else in my life, right? Those are the prompts that help us get out of our own head, out of our own processes that we're in every day, the ruts, and get us to think in the whole picture, and then granting ourselves that permission. Permission is the first step in building aligned success. Without permission, we don't take that action step. We don't step into our true power without that permission, and not the permission and validation from others, but from ourselves, from inside. So permission is the first step to building aligned success. So if you're ready to build aligned success for you, choose one area today where you're going to grant yourself permission. Whereas one area that you feel stuck in, maybe that you just feel like you need some newness, some pivot, some change, where are you going to add that permission to yourself so you can create that action step, that action plan for you to make a change in your life? Where are you feeling stuck? Okay, so to go back with the 3 women that I met for coffee, I wish so desperately that I knew then what I know now about permission and how vital it is for it to come within us. Because what I did was I actually gave them that outside validation instead of pulling out the permission from themselves. And what would happen if we let them pull that permission out from themselves is that they will be trusting themselves. They will be looking inside their own self to make that decision, to give that permission. And that is where the power comes from. The power does not come from being validated by someone else. The power comes from within. If this spoke to you today on a deep level, I just thank you so much for listening. I see you. Permission is one of the hardest things to give ourselves, especially as busy women. We often don't stop and pause and reflect. So I'm so proud of you for showing up here. And if you just felt like this was a message someone else needs, I just invite you to share this. This is such an important message for women, especially, of where are we finding our permission? Where are we finding our validation? And how do we pull that out of ourselves? Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If this spoke to you, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. You've got this. Stay clear, stay grounded, and stay true to what you're building. Until next time, tits up.